And welcome back. It's Jason Walter here. I want to talk about what's happening right now in the Colorado housing market. This is because the Colorado Association of Realtors just announced a new housing market update through January this year. They actually just posted this a couple days ago. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I have a lot to share. Again, this is from the Colorado Association of Realtors for January here. It says both home buyers and sellers continue to feel the effects of the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes designed to help curb inflation and slow the market. Housing prices across the 7-county Denver metro area and state continue to fall slightly as buyers struggle to justify higher monthly housing payments and weakened home buying power. So for every 1% rise in mortgage rates, that causes a 10% decrease in buyers' purchasing power. And because rates went from about 4.1% 12 months ago, now they're around 6.8%, that causes a decrease of buyers' purchasing power by about 25%. And it says here, homeowners who have locked in very low mortgage rates don't see the value of selling their houses right now. And you can see that by this decrease of new listings, which I'll share with you guys here in just a little bit. The Colorado Association of Realtors also went on to say the following. Although the combination of factors has led to a nice bump in active inventory, and of course the month supply of inventory increasing as well, overall inventory remains extremely low, I would say historically speaking, across a majority of price points. The supply and demand equation is helping keep prices from falling significantly, keeping many buyers on the sidelines, while others are getting a little more time to consider a purchase, make offers, and complete inspections. So I have a lot to share regarding that because I have some numbers to share with you guys regarding giant increases of inventory and also big decreases in home prices as well, especially compared to the highs we saw back in April last year. So changing gears slightly here, let's talk about what's happening right now for January and how that compares to years past. Again, this is from the Colorado Association of Realtors for January. In today's video, by the way, I'm going to focus on single family houses and not so much townhomes and condos, although you can see that on the slides here in just a little bit. So let's first talk about single family houses for new listings. New listings decreased by 17.8% on a year-over-year basis. So from January 2022 through January this year, a decrease of 18%. And by the way, I'm going to share trends for each of these metrics here in just a little bit, because of course I have a lot to share. Pending home sales decreased by 10.2%. So we're seeing 10% fewer contracts being signed between buyers and sellers compared to 12 months ago. But we did see a slight, or actually a big increase in January regarding new contracts being signed. More on that here in just a little bit. Closed home sales decreased by almost 30% from 12 months ago. And home prices, the median sold price is flat. So 1 year ago, the median sold price was $520,000, and in January, it also was $520,000. So home prices flat. So also regarding the percent of list price received, 1 year ago, houses on average were selling for about 1% over asking. Now they're selling for approximately 2% below asking as of this January. And that's a decrease of 3.2 percentage points. Now here's some big stats here. It's taking approximately 27 days longer to sell a house in the state of Colorado compared to 12 months ago. Because days in the market 1 year ago was only 35 days, and now it's 62 days. That's a gain of 77.1% compared to 12 months ago. Meanwhile, there's approximately 68.3% more houses listed for sale in the state of Colorado compared to January of 2022, going from 5,830 to just over 9,800 houses for sale. And also the month supply is only at 1.5 months right now, still at very low levels historically speaking, but much higher compared to 1 year ago, a gain of 114.3%. And very briefly, we're also seeing similar trends regarding townhomes and condos across the state as well. Big decreases of new listings, pendings, as well as sold listings as well, or closed home sales down by almost 40%. And also home prices, or not home prices, the median sold price for condos and townhomes flat compared to 1 year ago at $400,000. Also huge gains of inventory, an increase of almost 70% of active listings, and the months supply a gain of 133.3%. Okay, let's talk about new listings in the state of Colorado. So for January, there was 4,698. That's a decrease of 17.8% compared to January of 2022. But when looking at year-over-year changes, it really doesn't tell us the full story though, right? Look at this though, because compared to last month, even though new listings are down by about 18% compared to 1 year ago, we saw this giant increase of new listings in January compared to December, a gain of 50.7%. What's interesting about this is that this is the first increase of new listings in the state of Colorado in the last 7 months. New listings were decreasing from, July all the way until we hit December. But then in January, an increase of almost 51%, the first increase in the last 7 months. So one thing I do want to mention regarding this increase of 51% of new listings, obviously that's a big number, but it is normal to see an increase of new listings in the early parts of the year. In January and February, we tend to see an increase of new listings each and every year. Another thing you guys should be aware as well is that this 4,698 new listings this January is still historically very, very low. So looking at pre-COVID levels, it's more normal to see gains in the range of 6,000 to 7,000 houses newly listed for sale. 6,000 to 7,000 new listings each month in January, going back to 2010-ish. Look at this. So the green line here is single family houses. And here's January 2023, 4,698 new listings. So what's interesting about this is that look at how low this number is compared to years past. In years past, it's more normal to see new listings increase in the range of 6,000 to 700. Look at 2018, for example, approximately 7,000 new listings. In 2017, approximately 6,000. Just over 6,000 in 2016. It seemed like it's just like in 2015. 2014, just over 6,000 as well. 2013, approximately 7,000 new listings, and also above 6,000 in 2012, for example. So when looking at this here, for January 2023, this is the fewest amount of new listings for a January going back to at least 2010. So to summarize this right here is that it's also good if you're a home buyer looking to buy a house in Colorado to see this huge increase of almost 51% compared to last month. But historically speaking, this is a very low amount of new listings that just hit the market. So for example, in January 2022, there was 5,717 new listings. In January 2021, there was 6,452. But this January, just under 4,700. Let's also talk about contracts being signed between buyers and sellers or pending home sales, because those decreased by 10.2%. However, though, look at this month-to-month increase, an increase of almost 47% compared to December last year. So a huge increase of contracts being signed in January, but we're still down by about 10% compared to 12 months ago. Also at 5,284. This is actually the highest levels of contracts being signed since September of 2022. So to me, this kind of appears to be kind of some seasonality of our housing market. We tend to see an increase of contracts being signed each January compared to December at least. But when comparing this to last year, it's not like that at all, right? Because last year rates were around 4.1%. Actually, in January 2022, rates were around 3.3%. In this January, they're around 6%. So rates more or less have doubled or almost have doubled compared to the past 12 months. So this, of course, is one reason why we're seeing a significant decrease of contracts being signed compared to January 2022. Also, when looking at this chart below here, it appears that January's levels at 5,284, even with that 47% rise compared to December, it looks like the lowest levels for a January going back to January of 2015. In other words, the lowest levels of contracts being signed for a January going back to January 2015. You can see that when looking at this chart right here, because looking at pre-COVID levels, let's call it January 2019, approximately 6,000 contracts that were signed, also around 6,000 in 2018. In 2017, a little bit below 6,000. as well as 2016. But 2015 looks like, it really doesn't, they don't tell us the actual numbers here, but just kind of like eyeballing this, it looks like the lowest levels since January 2015 based on current levels right now. Let's also talk about closed home sales. Whenever I talk about closed home sales, the median sold price, this is a lagging indication of our housing market though, right? So sold listings, those decreased by 29.4% on a year-over-year basis, and also decreased by 22.2% compared to December last year. What's interesting about this to me is that closed home sales have been decreasing for 5 consecutive months in the state of Colorado. And on top of that, this 22.2% decrease of closed home sales is actually the biggest decrease on a month-to-month basis in at least the last 12 months. Additionally, when looking at this chart below here for single family, it appears that based on current levels right now at about 3,441, we haven't seen levels below, or actually significantly below 4,000 since at least January of 2012, which is right here, where closed home sales were significantly below 4,000 closed home sales. It also appears starting back in January 2013, we had more than 4,000 closed home sales every single month until January 2023. Let's also discuss the median sold price in the state of Colorado, because again, that's flat, 520,000. 1 year ago, it was also 520,000. A 0% gain in the median sold price here in Colorado, not California. Last year, look at this. In January 2022 compared to January 2021, there was actually a 16.9% increase. Back in January 2021 compared to 2020, we saw an 11.5% increase. So what a difference 3 years makes, because now home prices are flat compared to 12 months ago. One thing I do want to mention that's very, very important is that some people would take away this video and say, oh yeah, home prices are flat, no big deal, right? So one thing I do want to mention is that year-over-year stats do not tell us the full story, right? Because look at this. I really love how they share month-to-month changes. For February compared to January last year, we saw a 6.7% increase. Then in March, 3.6% increase. In April, a 4.3% increase. But ever since then, home prices in the state of Colorado have been declining. So every single month going back to May of 2020, we've been seeing decreases in home prices statewide. So in other words, the gains we saw back in February through April of 2022 have been virtually been wiped out due to the fact that home prices have been declining ever since May of last year. On top of that, when looking at the highs we saw last year, which was 600,000 set in April 2022, compared to now, home sold prices have decreased by 13% in the state of Colorado. This is actually pretty comparable to nationwide levels. According to data from Redfin, home prices or home sold prices have decreased by about 11% nationwide ever since May and June of last year. And here's a chart looking at home prices going back to 2010, which is pretty remarkable. Look at this. Every single year, home prices tend to peak in the spring and summer months. We kind of see this gradual increase in home prices ever since really 2012, 2013. But you can see this seasonality of our housing market where home prices tend to peak in the spring and summer months each and every year, right? Look at this though. 2021, we saw a sharp increase in home prices, and then home prices were relatively flat in the second half of 2021. In 2022, a sharp increase until we hit May. Starting in May, home prices decrease through the rest of the year. This huge decrease in home prices is unlike anything we've really seen going back to at least 2010. Again, a decrease of 13% compared to April 2022. Let's also talk about the percent of list price received. One thing they do not mention is this original list price or final list price. They don't mention that. So anyways, the percent of list price received, I would imagine it's probably the final list price, but just only a guess. If you guys know, please leave me a comment below. So the percent of list price received for January was 97.8%. Meaning homes sold for approximately 2% below the seller's asking price. 1 year ago, that ratio was actually a 101%. Houses on average were selling for about 1% over asking. Now they're selling for about 2% below. Additionally, when looking at this chart below here, it appears that 97.8% appears to be the lowest levels since at least 2014. 2014's right here, which appears to be comparable levels to what we're seeing right now at approximately 98% right now. And obviously at 98% more or less right now, this is obviously much lower than the highs we saw at 104.9% that was set in April of last year. I mean, it's pretty wild how the housing market has shifted so greatly in 9 months. Houses selling for about 5% over asking back in April. Now they're selling for about 2% below. Let's also talk about days on the market, or how fast or how slow houses are selling in the state of Colorado. At 62 days right now, back in February 2022, it only took 32 days to sell a house. So days on the market has increased a whopping 77.1% compared to January of 2022. And in fact, days on the market has been rising every single month going back to June of last year. And on top of that, we've been seeing double-digit increases on a month-to-month basis going back to July last year. I also want to give you guys an update regarding housing inventory for the Colorado housing market, because that increased a whopping 68.3% compared to 12 months ago. Of course, that may sound like a lot, but surprisingly though, this is actually the smallest year-over-year increase since September. Look at this. September, we saw a gain of 66.3%. October, 77%. November, 89%. December, a gain of 85%. And in January, only an increase of 68.3%. The smallest gain since September. One more thing I do want to mention regarding this is that we have approximately 9,814 houses for sale as of the end of January in Colorado. This is actually the lowest levels going back to April last year. Let's also have a look at trends going back to 2010 regarding housing inventory. Look at this, because this is a seasonality of our housing market. We tend to see more houses for sale in the state of Colorado and frankly across the United States in the spring and summer months. So you can see that right here, a peak each and every year, more or less in the summer months each year. So one thing that really caught my attention regarding this is that look at this downward trajectory regarding the number of houses for sale in Colorado ever since 2010. So through 2010 through more or less 2018, we saw this downward trajectory in the number of houses for sale. Look at 2017. 2017, approximately 20,000, just over 20,000 houses for sale in the spring and summer months. Look at 2010 though, approximately 45,000. So that's number one, kind of this downward trajectory regarding the number of houses for sale in the state. Number two is this right here, because right now there's approximately just under 10,000 houses for sale. This is well above, of course, last year's levels, and of course in 2021. Back in 2021, there was 7,260 houses for sale. Now there's 9,814. So the current levels we have right now are well above 2022 and 2021. However, though, when looking at pre-COVID levels, we're at very low levels. Let's look at 2020. 2020, there's approximately 15,000 houses for sale. Same for 2019, as well as 2018, for example. So historically speaking, we're at very low levels, but much higher compared to the past couple of years. Let's also have a look at the month's supply right now. So the month supply is only 1.5 months, a very low number, but much higher compared to 12 months ago. 12 months ago, the month supply was 0.7 months. Now it's double that at 1.5%, a gain of 114.3%. One thing I do want to mention regarding this is that even though we saw a huge increase compared to 12 months ago, a gain of 114.3%, the month supply has been decreasing for 4 consecutive months, going back to October last year. So the month supply has been decreasing for 4 consecutive months. On top of that, the current levels right now, 1.5 months. This is actually the lowest levels going back to May of last year, when the month supply was 1.3 months. Additionally, historically speaking, 1.5 months is obviously a very low amount of inventory, especially compared to 2010 through 2012. Look at this. Back in January 2010, the month supply was around 8 months. Now it's 1.5 months. 2011, it was approximately 9 months. 2012, it was just under 8 months. So the levels we have right now are obviously well below the levels we had just after the Great Recession. And with that said, please comment below your biggest takeaways from today's video. Also, if you guys got any value in this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button. I really appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate you. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Look forward to seeing you on the next video.